Hi, I'm Randy Reid, Executive Director of the National Lighting Bureau, and we are here today to present our first ever Tesla Awards. The Tesla Awards were originally scheduled to be presented at Light Fair, but with Light Fair being canceled, we're doing them by Zoom. I would like to introduce Mary Beth Gotti. Mary Beth is a Director at Large of the National Lighting Bureau, and she has been in charge of the Tesla Awards. Mary Beth?
Well, thank you much, Randy. You know, it's been a real pleasure chairing this inaugural Tesla Awards, and we're looking forward to even bigger and better things as we move into 2021 and beyond. And let's create a awards program that's much simpler to enter. You know, let's keep it simple. Let's allow anybody to enter. You think of some of the past, other current awards programs, and it really is exclusively for lighting designers. But there's a lot of people that contribute to good lighting design that feature collaboration between the various stakeholders in a project. So we really thought it was a great idea to really focus on the values promoted by the National Lighting Bureau. I had some great judges this year, and I'd like to introduce them. Representing Lighting Research Center was John Paul Friesenier. From the National Lighting Bureau, we have Ruby Jadwit, a director, Howard Lewis, who's the vice chair, Terry McGowan, who is a director, and James Yorgey, who is the treasurer. So they did a great job. We did it all online, and they took time out of their schedules to help evaluate the entries this year. Well, it's my pleasure to really present this award for Covington San Francisco, and the designers are Paula Martinez, Charles Stone, Catherine Zub, and Amy Leader. So congratulations to all of you on an absolutely wonderful job. So talk a little bit about your project, and I want to just start with architectural coves. I mean, they're such an outstanding feature of the design, and you mentioned the challenge of creating perfect coves with rounded corners is extremely difficult. We're going to talk a little bit about what you did and why it was so well done.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us, first of all. We have worked with this architect for quite a long time. And one of the things that we've learned with working with LSM is that we have to pay very close attention to all the details. Specifically in this project where the building itself, the tower, curves at the very top, which is where our floors are, there were some existing curves to the floor plate. And so wanting to take advantage of what was existing, wanting to take advantage and play off of it, we actually developed some curves with just the architecture and the interior with the architectural team and really followed them along with the lighting. So some of the curves you see in some of the main photos that were submitted are really just taking advantage, playing off of the, like I said, the existing tower and drawing the user's eye, drawing the visitors out into San Francisco, looking out the window. We didn't want to take away from the view, which was the most important thing from being on those floors. So really, it was especially important for us to be able to successfully highlight the architect's finishes, their curves, and making sure that the coves look just as good. So when we say that it was quite difficult, you can imagine how precise we needed to be in order for the coves to look continuous, for the coves to look seamless, and not have any interruptions despite the curving nature of the tower.
Well, I would say that, which Paula had hinted on earlier, embracing the vertical planes and embracing the architectural elements and really keeping lighting treatments towards those elements. So you can see that we have light tracing the edge of the perimeter facade, and then stepping back to have the coves that stay tight to either the walls or anchor themselves over that double height space. I think the key was really using the volumes in the space and using that to guide where light lives. And of course, with the daylight harvesting, understanding at what extent does the electric lighting get controlled by that harvesting, and where can we make sure that our electric lighting kind of is at the boundary to ensure that the volume stays full.
one of the comments on the project, the lighting, it said the lighting design enhances the mood and encourages productive collaborative workspaces. Any of you can think about some of the feedback you've gotten from the occupants of this space?
I think using the design that we had, keeping it simple, but yet, as exactly what Paula and Katie has said, we're highlighting the architecture and letting that be the main speaking points. Kind of allows for this clean work environment that doesn't distract your focus, and therefore allows you to be as productive as possible in an environment that you feel comfortable in. And in the private offices, it's a simple design approach of a linear scheme, but also still having a little bit of decorative light at the perimeter, just as Katie had mentioned in the main space. And that kind of just ties the whole office level, private space, public space into the same tone.
It's a fabulous looking project. It's just marvelous. And one of the things, you have certainly great views, but sometimes daylighting can be overwhelming in a space. And are there shades integrated with the lighting in some way? Are there automated shading, and is it used to help? I mean, you can use shades to reduce sun glare, but you can also use them just to cut back daylighting and reduce regular, sort of normal glare from the daylight.
Yeah. Well, it was especially important to have shading in the conference spaces where you didn't want it, the camera to focus wrongly on the exterior, right? And you wanted to focus the user's attention and not necessarily blow out the image. So shading was especially important in conference rooms, but it was really a big move for the architect and the team to not want to hide the view out the window. So the big public space actually doesn't have any shading.
Jim, you did touch on one of the key design pressures, which is when you go up in that elevator and step off on that high floor, which really is at the shoulders of the Salesforce Tower, you are struck by the image across that deep lobby. It's extraordinary. It's wow. And the view to Alcatraz and out to the bay, it's just, oh my. Well, of course, that's the big challenge. Now what? That challenge of daylight is everywhere.
Yeah.
You have plenty. It's abundant. It's free. It's all there. And in fact, so much of our design reaction, the curving coves, the strong moves, lighting surfaces in the lobby, the choice of downlights, the refined details, they all contribute to having no distraction from the space you're in, and to provide luminosity that we think it's an ethereal effect. It really is extraordinary at sundown, where you just can't believe you're in an office building.
The coloring and the brightness of within the space, I think the issue with daylight also with large windows is the contrast to the interior. And I think you've solved that problem here.
Well, that's where the brilliance of this particular architect comes in. There's a lot of white, but when we get contrasting material, we make sure to pay attention to the lighting so that it's strong enough to stand up, in this case, against the powerful force of daylight in the space. And I just want to say how proud I am of Katie and Amy and Paula. This took a lot of visits. It's just an office floor, but not when you go up and step into that lobby, you realize it's much more.
I think
yeah, this is a building of coves, and I congratulate you on how uniform they look in the pictures. I had to bring up those pictures again. Did you specify that in a certain way so that you, for example, did not get color variations or brightness variations? Did you mock things up beforehand, or how did you handle that? Because unless those codes are consistent, this thing doesn't hold together.
Yeah, no, we did. We had various mock-ups. We were consistent with the manufacturers that we used, or one manufacturer that we used in all the coves. So we wouldn't have a large variety of color temperatures.
I want to congratulate the designers again on an absolutely wonderful job. And thank you for your participation in the 2020 Tesla Awards. And we'll look
Thank you
forward
so
to
much.
exhibitions next year.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to award the Tesla Awards to Vancouver Waterfront Park, Grant Street Pier and Plaza, and that's to Kevin Frary, Charles Stone, and Danielle Kelly of Fisher Marantz Stone. So again, congratulations. And I just want to introduce the award and then let you talk more about it. But a really beautiful project, elegant in its simplicity. The Grant Street Pier provides a dramatic and dynamic visitor experience. As the heart of a 32-acre development and 10-acre waterfront park, the Grant Street Pier provides a unique and intimate public gathering space within the heart of a revitalized downtown Vancouver. So visitor experience and views were very critical in this particular project. So again, congratulations on your award and on this project. And maybe just to get the conversation started here, but you mentioned that coordination with the artist, the landscape architect, the structural engineer, and the electrical engineer was very critical to the success of the lighting. So any particular parts of this process that you could share or that you want to talk about?
Well, the project cantilevers 90 feet out over the Columbia River. And one of the main things to do was create a pleasant environment for pedestrians when they'd come out here and enjoy it. So we didn't want to do anything that would obstruct with views, but the park was to be used at all hours of the day. So we had to make sure it was a pleasant and safe nighttime experience. So a lot of the lighting of the pier itself is very low level, meaning it's close to the walking surface, so that when people go out on the pier, they have these beautiful views and vistas looking south over the river towards Oregon. And lighting the pier or the mast of the pier that holds all the cable stays and keeps the pier supported was a pretty significant structural undertaking. And so you have to be careful about where you start poking holes in that structure to mount light fixtures to. So we had to work with all of these different disciplines, particularly the artist Larry Kirkland, whose sort of vision and design of the pier and the cable stay was to make sure at night it really represented something special in the heart of this park setting.
When you go to this place and have dinner outside and look across the river to what is Portland, right there in front of you is this thing, this pier and this mast that's all lit up quite interestingly. So when you go home that night and next Friday night comes around, hey honey, let's go back to that place we were last week, that thing, that time. It is that kind of an experience. And when you see it at sunset, and Kevin has done a beautiful thing, it's very easy to watch the sunset, the balance of the brightnesses of the fixtures and the surfaces where lighting do not interfere with your view of the river, which is a spectacular thing in itself. And should you happen to live across the river on the water, there's actually a trailer park. Or you could go by boat along the river and look at this thing. Kevin has cleverly put lights under the pier, which give it a sense of floating over the water. And so you're once again struck by the whole development and this thing, this interesting art piece really, designed by an artist called Larry Kirkland that we've worked with for more than 20 years.
Above the pier, because we are uplighting the mast, the Audubon Society got involved and was very concerned about how these uplights might impact the migration of birds. And so we had a couple of meetings with them. We shared some information with them, but really the luminaires that we're using and the optics that they have are very precise, and it's all very controlled really to only light the pier and the mast. So there's not much spill light. And we also worked with the engineer in terms of controls and a schedule of operation. So the lights on the mast that are uplighting and contributing somewhat to light pollution, we're careful and make sure those turn off at some point, so we're not just putting light up into the atmosphere.
How did you get that marvelous picture looking down on everything? it's just perfect. It really makes the whole
Gorgeous.
thing go together. It was really the thing that really did it for me. And yeah, you could tell that the uplight had been controlled, that everything was aimed properly, that the brightness balance was good. All of this good stuff was really captured in these pictures. So a remarkable job and remarkable pictures to go with it.
I noticed that you picked 4,000 K for the mast floodlights, but 3,000 K is all this surround. How did you come up? Did you just do some field tests to see how 4,000 K would look, or any, how did you come up with that decision?
Well, everything in the park was designed to be 3,000 Kelvin. And so we thought everything really in the pedestrian realm out on the pier through that boardwalk should fit in with that character of the park. But the mast was always this artistic element that was something different. And so we thought we intentionally wanted to play with color temperature to try and differentiate it a little bit. We did do, it's hard to do a mock-up of something of that scale, but we did get a few different fixture samples in the office with different color temperature and played around and see how they'd look together.
And congratulations on winning the Tesla Award this year, and for submissions from you in 2021. So again, thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you. We hope to be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce this award winner, Ford Foundation Center for Social Justice. Just an amazing project. The lighting designers were Paula Martinez, along with Keith Forrest and Zach Zanoli from Fisher Marantz Stone. So again, Paul, great to have you here. And I'd like to open up the floor and let you start talking, about the project. And I know you had a few additional comments as well. So welcome, congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. This was a project that was dear to our hearts because it is an office building that was designed in 1963 and completed in 1968. So it's sort of half a century old. And it was designed by Kevin Roche and his partner John Dinkaloo, who were successors to Eero Saarinen, a great mid-century architect. And it was a very important building because it was in many ways a gift to the city. So as you can see, it's 12 stories tall. It is in the form of a 200-foot square, and it has office wings on two sides, and they wrap around a 10-story high atrium with a garden in the bottom. It was the first sort of mid-century modern building to break from the model of the Seagram building or Lever House or any of the very first and very fine early modern architecture office buildings. So this was a model for an office building which was meant to benefit all of the people who worked there. And the idea was that the building was transparent. A foundation is an institution that gives away money. And the relationship of Ford Foundation to the people who benefit was meant to be transparent. This is the view of the garden, which is right on the street and is open to the public at all times. So at the top of the atrium, there is a row of lighting for the plantings. But as you can see from this view across 42nd Street, you can see straight through the building. Now, of course, all the lighting in the building was either tungsten, incandescent, or it was fluorescent. All the office lighting was fluorescent troffers of one sort or another, as was typical for the moment. And some special offices got better, more beautifully designed fixtures. All the materials are very rich, and all the materials are very warm. And so as we transitioned from tungsten lamps, incandescent lamps, and fluorescent lamps, and some metal halide lamps to an all LED solution, we had to be very careful about the color temperature and the color rendering of all of the lamps. It has been very difficult in lighting design to keep the palette under control, because different LEDs with the same color temperature rating don't necessarily exhibit the same visible color. And so we entered this job, what, 4 or 5 years ago, with a palette of LED systems that were beginning to become mature. And we think that we're still not in the golden age of LED light fixtures and light sources. We're just rounding the far corner of the track, and we're hoping that better quality and better color consistency is yet to come. Next slide, please. So this is a view across the atrium. As you can see, there is lots of art, there is lots of planting, and there is a whole story about the fundamental task of the foundation to represent all kinds of people. The main architectural change was comes in the office, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. Next slide, please. So this is inside the building. Remember, the public can come all the way up to this glass line in the atrium, and then there's control at this glass line. This was a rendering of the reception corridor that opens onto the elevators and all of the other elements that you see. As you can see, the materials are all warm and all well thought through. Gensler was the architect and took it upon themselves. And so we had, for example, we were able to source a downlight, which was smaller, great benefit of LEDs, but still reasonably glare-free, not always the benefit of LEDs. And so the main downlight is a recessed, a slightly recessed 4x4. And where we wanted a line of light for wall washing purposes, as you can see on the right, it was allowed to speak with a bolder voice, to be seen as light. Next slide, please. So this is the typical office floor, renewing the troffers that were originally in the ceiling. Even though the ceilings are not especially high, we hoped that we could do it with a simple pendant. So if you look at the next slide, you will see a lighting plan, which shows one light fixture for every bay of desks, about 30 feet apart, and we wanted the fixture to be soft in its distribution, not to be glary in any way. But we had this very large spacing as a criteria, because we wanted to really minimize the number of light fixtures on the floor. As you can see at the perimeter, there are little downlights. There was always imagined to be a necklace at the facades, but in the office itself, a very simple solution. And so, next slide, please. We developed a pendant, which you can see here, as all the metals in the building are brass, and so we decided to keep that. We have one fixture every 30 feet, and in order to avoid the tremendous light gradient that there would be on the ceiling with that kind of spacing, we developed a fixture, next slide please, that had, as you can see, as an uplight, 2 lines of LED with lenses, so that we could vector the light as far across the room as possible. So there is, because art has always been part of the mission and is more so now than ever, there is now a gallery which has changing exhibits, and the artists are all representative of the countries that the foundation is supporting. So there is a visual component to this, which we were very happy to help. And so that's the quick version of the lighting system for the Ford Foundation.
A quick question for you, Paul. You know, how much input from other stakeholders did you have for the design, or who did you have to get? Did you have to get approval for the lighting design? Did anyone else
Well,
have input?
Darren Walker, the chairman of the Ford Foundation, was very much involved in the project because he's in charge of the reinvention of the Ford Foundation into the Ford Foundation for Social Justice. Gensler was a wonderful and earnest colleague, I would say, and I think we probably turned through 6 or 7 iterations before we got to the one that we all could buy into.
And I noted, or what you noted, that you achieved the USGBC LEED Platinum for this particular building. Any big challenges in achieving that level?
Well, I mean, the great benefit of the LED source is that it has a terrific efficacy if used well, and so the efficacy was key, and I can't say that there was any special challenge in meeting all the criteria for various awards that it was submitted for, but it is a very green. It went from being a very ungreen building with plenty of incandescent lamps and retrofit lamps and all kinds of shenanigans that buildings go through before they manage to get themselves put together with new and better light sources.
Paul, this is Terry McGowan.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, did you keep color temperature consistent in all the spaces, or was there some variation depending upon the application?
Except for the gallery, which has a slightly cooler color temperature. It's all the same. It's all one color.
And what is the CRI you were actually achieving over here?
We were shooting for 90 plus.
Okay.
And more or less we've got it.
It's my pleasure to have Enrique Garcia Carrera here, who was involved with the first 2 award-winning projects that we would like to discuss. And he's with Fisher Marantz Stone. And the first project is the Embry Riddle Mori Husseini Student Union, and along with Mi Young Song was involved with the lighting design for this project. And before I ask Enrique a few questions, I wanted to just summarize a few of the things that he had submitted in the proposal, in the project submittal. And interesting, the building's sweeping design, inspired by birds in flight, gives physical expression to the university's mission, aviation and aerospace education. The building's expansive 3-story atrium is an open and light-filled space that anchors and integrates the collaborative interior, lounges, dining venues, study rooms, career services, areas for student art exhibitions, and the library. I mean, this is really a virtual city within a city, offers a lot of places to meet, prepare for class, or relax. So again, very beautiful structure and some beautiful lighting. So congratulations, Enrique, absolutely outstanding job. We're so pleased to honor this project. So just as an opening question, and feel free to ad lib certainly, but what were the biggest challenges in trying to reinforce the architect's poetic interpretation of a building taking flight?
Well, thanks very much. We're very happy to participate in the awards in its first iteration. And the 2 projects that we're going to talk about couldn't be more different one from the other. So it's good to be recognized for a variety of aesthetics and architecture. And this particular project was challenging due to a lot of the attributes that you just mentioned about the structure itself make it a beautiful building, but also difficult to illuminate. There's curving structures and planes that really make it difficult to come in with a rigorously organized lighting solution that can be functional for the spaces. And so it's always tenuous to try to integrate artifacts into such free-flowing structures. So we try to do it in the most conscious way and in the most delicate way, and really honoring the shapes and also the aspiration of the building, which is, the Embry Riddle is an aviation university, and it's all about soaring and taking flight. And we wanted the lighting in its own subtle way to reflect that. This was not a building that was seeking LEED light pollution certification per se. In fact, the light pole standard around campus is not a cutoff light fixture. So there's already a little bit of upward vectoring lumens going around the campus. However, our specific building location is adjacent to an observatory building. And the observatory folks and the researchers and the faculty were very concerned about excessive amount of light coming from this building. And as you've seen, the building is nothing but a lantern. It's got multi-story curtain walls on all sides, plus it's got a skylight above. So we had to be conscious of that. We wanted to celebrate the building, and the building has a great soaring roof overhang, which we did wanted to highlight. That's one thing that we really wanted to do. And we had to do it very carefully with very precisely directed light and with very tight controlled beam spreads, so that the great majority of the lumens were indeed captured by the overhang and did not continue on upward.
Oh, yeah, great. So just any specific tips, one more thing, selecting luminaires for all of these different ceiling heights. I mean, if someone's trying to do similar type of project, what do you look for in order to make it happen?
Well, there's the performance aspects, and then there's the aesthetics and the integration into the architecture. And we have the top story of the building has the large curving roof as its ceiling, and then that roof continues on and lights not only the single height space of the fourth floor, but then an adjacent double height space, triple height space, and quadruple height space. And that ceiling is covering that whole space. There's a big long skylight running through the center of that ceiling, and it was decided by the architects and by ourselves that the best approach was to have a lighting system integrated into that skylight that could traverse the whole length of the building and illuminate all these different levels.
Yeah, I had a question, obviously focused on controls. I'm curious, I assume you met the minimum requirements, of energy codes, but more importantly, to maintain, the aesthetics and maybe help with the whole night sky thing. How do you handle the control side of things?
Well, the controls for the open spaces were mostly handled by the electrical engineer, and they were designed to meet code, as you say. There's a lot of daylight coming into this building, so there's a lot of daylighting control integrated into the control system, because we're getting daylight coming in from the sides of the building and also from the top of the building. So it's a heavily daylight control system.
What does the rest of the campus look like?
Well, the building that stands out in my mind, because it was the one that we had to be more aware of, is the observatory building. And it looks like it's a fairly straightforward, boxy looking building that was probably built in the 70s or maybe in the 80s. And it's quite a simple rectangular looking building, and it does have a dome at the top where the telescope room is located. And the university in all seems to all be mostly older buildings, not very old. It's not like walking into Princeton or Harvard and saying, you know, a building that might be 100 or 200 years old, but certainly 40 years old, 50-year-old buildings.
Well, again, congratulations on the Tesla Award for this project. And the second project we want to discuss here is, again, very different. This is the Edition Hotel Cabaret Paradise Club. So very intriguing project. Again, you're the lead designer, and also contributing were Liana Mirasan and Paula Martinez. So I just wanted to read a couple things that you submitted for this project. Paradise Club has many uses, and it can be rented out for product launches and meetings and luncheons. Although its primary function is as a nightclub. It's on an entire floor in a new high-rise hotel in Times Square, so a pretty exciting venue. Total flexibility was required. So both fixed architectural and flexible theatrical lighting were merged into a single digital control universe. Question, you know, since total flexibility was required and the systems were merged into a single digital control universe, that sounds difficult, right? You said that our profession is still in transition from the analog world to the digital realm. Right? Any best practice you can share with others as trying to make this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I should say that from our office, Paula Martinez was the lead designer of the project, more so than myself. I was deeply involved, but you know, this really came from the imagination of Paula Martinez, and we had a nice ongoing struggle with finding the best way to control an unwieldy, wild ceiling lighting system, which obviously required high-tech digital lighting controls, but also to be able to dim everything down to zero seamlessly as is required in a performance environment. So the transition from the analog to the digital is fairly easy to achieve in certain environments, but when one is trying to harness all the lighting and really dim it down smoothly and slowly, that's when you start noticing the shortcomings of current technology. And so we did end up having a combination of LED artifacts along with some old-fashioned tungsten halogen incandescent sources that dimmed beautifully and had embedded dim to warm technology.
Anything about the team interactions when you think about trying to bring this design to its successful implementation?
I think the most important interaction between the teams was the interaction between the creator of the space, who is Ian Schrager, who decades ago created Studio 54 and collaborated with Paula Martinez on that over 40 years ago. They went on to create the Palladium Discotheque together in the 80s. And then Ian basically created the concept of the boutique hotel with his series of Royalton, Paramount, Chelsea hotels. And now he was back into creating this nightclub cabaret environment and brought his old collaborator Paula Martinez back. So they have a shorthand with one another of what wants to be achieved, and they are both very hands-on, which is why I said that Paul was really the lead designer from our side of things. One would expect that a project this complicated would also have a deep collaboration with a theatrical consultant. And at the beginning of the project, that was the case, but then the theatrical consultant left after design development was completed. And it was really left to the contractors to fill in that gap. So there was a lot of communication between us and the contractors to get the system to work well together.
And one last thing, you know, what has been the response to the lighting design in Paradise Club? Any feedback that you can share?
Well, yeah, so our only direct exposure to the club was on opening night, when Diana Ross was the opening night act, and Paul and his wife went invited into the space and couldn't make it past the bar because it was so crowded. So they bailed. And we've seen reviews. I mean, it's popular, it's crowded, and you know, you need a reservation to get in there. And it's been described as magnificent, and it's been described as pure drama, which I think is very apt.
Yeah, and Enrique, I had a question. The control system obviously is sophisticated and complicated, but for events where you're doing, you know, you're just serving dinner, or you know, an evening where maybe someone using the space just wants one or two presets, is there a simple control capability beyond the complex?
Yes, there is, and there's a main control system that really allows control of all the lighting in the space, and that was provided by ETC. It is a Mosaic console, and then of course we were able to program preset scenes for dining, for pre-show, for dance floor, for even, you know, like for a conference. You can rent out the space for a conference. We have all those presets that are easily recalled from a keypad. And then in addition, there's obviously interface with theatrical consoles that any act that comes in can plug in their console. There's also an in-house theatrical console that was used to program the opening night show.
Well, again, congratulations on some beautiful lighting designs. So on behalf of the National Lighting Bureau, thank you for entering these projects, and congratulations on receiving these awards.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're very happy to receive the awards.